Greetings, YouTube pipe community. It's Peter Piper, the True Light, coming to you from my deck. The Silhouette edition. I have to apologize. I have to get an umbrella to get the sun off of me. For Rhode Island, it is a hot day. I think it may have hit 90 today with the heat index. Probably over 100. High humidity. High sweat factor. It is 17:25 hours Eastern Standard Time, minus 4 hours Greenwich Mean Time for my global subscribers. This is a VR to Smoking Cardboard. Steve Coddington asking for a family story. Now, being that it's past 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm hoping that Steve will include me in his GAW because I'm an hour ahead of him. And if I'm late, that's fine. I needed to get this family story VR because I've been putting it off for a while, and I had a really busy week, even though I had to take off for a business trip Thursday afternoon, and was up in Tewksbury, Andover, Massachusetts for a class I had to take for my job. First of all, housekeeping. I'm smoking my Savinelli 626 Trevi 6mm filter, and in it I am smoking, in the Peterson pouch, I have some John Bull, which is surprisingly a delicious English blend. Not sure where it comes from, whether it's domestic or imported, but this was a gift actually from Folk Wolf. He sent me a lot of blends because he's pretty much on the wagon as far as pipe smoking is concerned, in consideration for his wife, which is something I truly respect. But I want to tell a story, and this story is about how I came to be, and let's see, Old and in the Way did a VR in which he stated that he may not have come to be because of circumstances that preceded something with his grandfather almost becoming decapitated, which is a great story actually. And if that would have happened, he wouldn't have happened. And in the case of my mom, I may not have happened also, or my soul may have been relegated to someone else. Anyway, my mom grew up in Latvia, and in 1944, Latvia was in somewhat of a tug of war between Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia. And ironically, the Soviets, being allied with America, annexed Latvia. So they left Latvia. They didn't want to live under communism. And they traveled by rail. They left their home, pretty much left everything behind, all their property certainly, and just basically had the stuff on their backs the clothes on their back and maybe what few possessions they had, and boarded a German troop ship. In Poland, I believe. And I didn't do my homework on this. I'm not sure if they sailed from Poland or they sailed to Poland. But of course, Poland was also annexed. So I'm going to guess that they boarded the German troop ship in Poland. They were able to negotiate their way into the hold of the ship, which was below the waterline, and certainly being in a time of war, making that trip was perilous. If they would have been torpedoed by Allied forces, they certainly would have perished. And they eventually came to, I believe, Germany. And were able to get on a train to Hanover. And one of the interesting parts of the journey was my grandmother was pregnant with my uncle, and my mother had my sister, who was an infant at the time. Both my uncle and my sister were born in 1944. And there were no Pampers back then. So I imagine my mother had a load of cloth diapers. And my grandmother was so, for lack of a better word, bloated and water heavy that she couldn't walk. And my mother had to carry her up several flights of stairs to the train platform while she was pregnant with my uncle. Meanwhile, my sister, who was an infant, my mother left her on the train and was able to, and went down from the train platform to get my grandmother and carry her up and get her onto the train, just probably seconds before the train took off. They arrived in Hanover, Germany, and Hanover was pretty heavily bombed at that time, and the only standing building in the village was where she was supposed to meet up with a relative of hers. I think it was one of her aunts, and they did meet up, and basically that was the rally point for everything that basically bringing the family back together. I know that I think my family was somewhat splintered in that my mom's uncle and aunt were had separate arrangements to get there, but they all eventually got there together in 1944. And from 1944 to 1950, they lived in DP camps, which were camps for displacement, for displaced persons, hence the acronym DP. And I believe they were run by the Red Cross at the time. So, as you can imagine, Latvia, of course, was originally under German control, and many of the young men at the time were enlisted in the German army, including my mom's husband at the time. She later divorced him very shortly after coming to America. But he was in the German army. And I think that shortly after they arrived, there were German patrols going around trying to round up round up troops, for Germany to, to repel the Allied invasion. And of course, my mom's husband at the time was one of those people. And my mom tells the story, and I've got a recording of it. I recorded her audio depiction of this event. That these German patrols came around, and of course, my mom's husband at the time would have been considered a deserter, and they were coming around, and if they would have determined he was a deserter, they certainly could have shot him on the spot. And it's kind of a humorous or ironic thing. What happened next was that my mom's husband denied being in the army, and these German, soldiers, I'm imagining there were maybe 2 of them, fully armed and everything, said, okay, so you're not a German soldier, okay. And to be specific, the Latvians were in something called the Latvian Legion, which were under German, command. And they kind of looked at my mom and kind of chuckled and said, we know he's a soldier, and they just kind of chuckled and left. And I think the sentiment at the time was that they knew they were losing the war, and I think that the sentiment on the German side was that, why bother? So they left him alone. They didn't shoot him, and they went their way. So they lived there until 1950 in the DP camps, and it wasn't. I don't think it was pleasant, but at the same time, I think they were thankful for what they had, for what they could get in terms of food, clothing, and shelter. My mom said that the best Christmas she ever had was when she requested a pair of shoes from my sister. And on Christmas Day, they got a care package, and on top of the care package was a pair of shoes for my sister, because she needed them. One of the women that my mom knew as a friend used to be like a bus girl, or a bus, for lack of a better term, and she used to clean tables from the officers' club, and she'd empty the ashtrays, and she would save cigarette butts and bring them home like wrapped up in a napkin to her dad, and he'd have like a pair of rolling papers, little zigzags, and he'd open up the butts of the cigarettes and get, there's still tobacco there, and that was the only tobacco they were able to get a hold of, and he'd roll up his own cigarettes. So life was hard, and in 1950 they boarded a ship for the United States and sailed into New York Harbor. And my sister recalls, and I think she wrote an essay when she was in high school about seeing the Statue of Liberty, and my mother telling her that they were in a free country now. Well, my uncle and my grandmother stayed in Long Island, New York, with a woman who sponsored them. Her name was Mrs. Eichelberger. Ironically, she was a Jewish woman. And my mom and my sister, and eventually I think my grandmother and my uncle lived in Memphis, Tennessee for a while. And I'm not sure of the goings and comings of that period, how they were, you know, in one part of the family was in Long Island, another family, part of the family, my mom's side was in Memphis, Tennessee. And my mother was trained as a nurse. She was educated in Germany and was a very intelligent woman. And certainly instilled in me a passion for knowledge. But she worked as a nurse in St. Joseph's Children's Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. And then she contracted tuberculosis and had to go to a sanatorium and be isolated. And my dad met her at that point. My dad was a Navy veteran. He was an enlisted man in the Navy and had gotten out after World War II. It's 1950 now. His enlistment was complete, and he served as a veteran in World War II. However, he never saw combat, but he's still considered a World War II veteran and has all the honors due to him as such. Yeah, I think he met my mom. I believe he was a life insurance salesman at that point, being a civilian. And maybe I'm just imagining this. This is just conjecture on my part, but tried to sell my mom a life insurance policy while she was sick with TB in a hospital in Memphis. And couldn't go anywhere near her for 4 years because TB is certainly contagious. But when she was eventually released and cured, missing a part of her lung, of course, and she wanted very badly to smoke, and her doctor told her, "You're fine now, go ahead and smoke." And my mom was a cigarette smoker up until, I think, the early 80s, when she developed an ulcer and eventually quit. But certainly a menthol cigarette smoker. She lived to be 91. But anyway, after divorcing her first husband that she met in Latvia, being divorced, she remarried and certainly married my dad. And my dad eventually missed flying a great deal because he was an Airedale in the Navy, and re-enlisted and eventually made the rank of Chief Petty Officer as an Airedale. His rate being ATC, Aviation Electronics Technician Chief. He flew in an aircraft known as Douglas Skyraider, which is a single-engine anti-submarine spotting plane. He was in an airborne early warning squadron. And I believe he actually flew the plane as well, because he has a flight log. And I got lots of pictures and stuff. But he passed away at the tender age of 36 from Hodgkin's disease when I was 7 years old. So, needless to say, my mother saw lots and lots and lots of tribulation throughout her life. And I'm thankful that I have these stories to relate to. When my dad re-enlisted in the Navy, he was stationed when I was born. I was born in Lakehurst Naval Air Station in New Jersey, and he was in a blimp squadron, ZP-3, Zulu Papa 3. That was a blimp squadron. It was decommissioned later. And then he was transferred to Quonset Point, Rhode Island, and was in an airborne early warning squadron, VAW-33. And the planes, as I said, were Douglas Sky Raiders. They had the designation AD-5W, Alpha Delta 5 Whiskey. Once again, anti-submarine spotting planes that had a large radome on the bottom. And if he wasn't flying, he was operating the radar. Also went down to the Bay of Pigs invasion. He was stationed on the the VAW-33 squadron was stationed on the Essex for the Bay of Pigs invasion. I think it was 1962, if I'm not mistaken. And he came back from that, and that was probably the only real closest to combat experience he had. Anyway, I'll wrap this up, and that's my story, and that's why I'm here. Thanks so much for listening. If you've held on for this long, 23 minutes coming up on. Be safe. Speak the truth. Seek enlightenment. It's Peter Piper, the True Light, signing off. God bless, folks.